Israel launched a ground offensive in Gaza, and you said that Israel is isolating itself from world opinion by failing to clinch a peace deal with the Palestinians. This is a conflict that you weren't able to resolve when you were in office. What makes you think that it's possible now?
Well, I think it's possible partly because at some point you get tired of doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same results. It's crazy. But I think that, and I hope that this will lead to everybody doing a little soul searching and trying to get back to the baseline issue of a peace agreement. Now, with Hamas involved, it raises a different issue, which is that there's no way the Israelis are going to give up the West Bank and agree to a state unless Hamas agrees to give up violence and recognize Israel's right to exist. They won't do it, and that's sort of a non-starter. And I think it should be. That is, I think you can't just have a one-way peace. You got to have both sides have got to give up what the other side most objects to.
Do you see that happening anytime soon?
I don't see it, but I feel that it could happen. I know that Prime Minister Netanyahu could make a peace that a majority of the Israelis would support. They have said over and over again, if he says that this is good for their security, they would support it.
President Clinton is travelling through Southeast Asia on his way to Australia to speak at the International AIDS Conference. A number of researchers due to attend were killed on board MH17.
We need to wait to make any definitive statements until we know exactly what happened, but it was sickening thinking about those people being knocked out of the sky. It's pretty tough.
Do you believe that the US and international community did enough to try and stop the fighting, considering that this advanced military technology appears to have landed in the hands of pro-Russian forces?
The answer to the question you asked is yes, but it doesn't mean I think we did enough. There's another question, though, and that is whether we could have then and we can now give this new Ukrainian government the kind of economic support they need for the course they've laid out.
We met with the former president in Vietnam, where his foundation works to provide better access to medication for children living with HIV/AIDS. He has a special connection with this country. Back in 2000, he became the first US president to visit since the end of the Vietnam War. And while in office, he lifted the long-standing trade embargo.
There is so much painful history attached to this country, and yet, as president, you redefined US relations with Vietnam, helping to transform this country. How does this rate as one of your achievements?
Well, for me personally, it's way up there. I mean, 20 years ago, this year, we dropped the embargo. 20 years ago, next year, we normalized relations. We probably don't have a stronger ally in Asia now than Vietnam. I think the per capita income in Vietnam was something like $300 a year when we started 20 years ago, and now it's just off the charts. So it's it's really wonderful. Every time I come here, I pinch myself almost to see what's happened.
But it changed people's lives.
Yeah, it has. I'm glad we did it, and I'm glad it's worked out. And I'm glad that I had the support of so many Vietnam veterans, including Secretary of State Kerry and Senator John McCain. We had right across the political spectrum, we were doing this together.
In Hanoi, Clinton visited an AIDS orphanage where he saw firsthand children benefiting from his foundation's work.
When we came here first in 2006, every one of these children was HIV positive. They would have eventually died of AIDS. They had no future. And so to see them now healthy and alive, and it's just amazing. It's far more than anything I could say justified the way I try to live my life now. You know, I love my life in politics. I loved it. But the difference, I think, now is that I can see the personal human implications of the decisions we're making.
Clinton was also in Indonesia, still rebuilding nearly 10 years after the devastating tsunami that killed more than 200,000 people. Banda Aceh was one of the hardest hit areas.
You know, it's almost impossible to believe that 10 years ago there was literally nothing.
And the power of Mother Nature as
Yeah.
well.
He was in Banda Aceh shortly after the disaster as a UN Special Envoy working alongside former President George Bush Sr.
It was an unusually good reconstruction, and you know, after President Bush and I finished doing our work, the UN asked me to be the coordinator for their efforts, and I did that for a couple of years.
Spending time with children at a local mosque.
Tangannya diangkat, tangannya.
Even as news of undocumented children crossing the US border is in the headlines back home.
President Obama believes they have to be deported. At the same time, he wants to overhaul the immigration system. What is the answer?
First of all, in general, I support what he's trying to do. There's no question that a lot of those young people were sent to the United States because they were told back in the countries they came from that once they got here, if they were kids, they could stay. So we just got to work through all this. But I think in general, what the president proposed is good. But we need to pass the comprehensive immigration reform legislation. And I hope he will get this money he's asked for, because some of these kids may be eligible to stay under our laws because of the circumstances they face back home.